Welcome to Resume the Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Page, and I'm here to spread the message that you can, in fact, be happy in your career. I'm a former executive recruiter turned career coach, and I am obsessed with learning about why people have chosen their career, what led them to that decision, and how they achieved happiness in the process. So, come join the ongoing conversation that exposes you to career paths of all origins with one thing in common: happiness. So, press play and let's resume the conversation with this week's episode. This week on Resume the Podcast, Kelly Tolliday is our guest, yoga and meditation teacher, group travel and retreat facilitator, podcast host, and entrepreneur. Kelly is clearly a multi-passionate, purpose-driven working mom who is committed to serving her community. As the host of the podcast Transform with Travel, Kelly discusses with her guests how travel can influence our lives in unexpected and profound ways. She has lived and worked in Australia, Europe, Central America, Southeast Asia, and now is back in her hometown in South Florida. She has over a decade of experience working in digital marketing, working with global brands such as Kimberly-Clark, Bayer, Dove, and more, as well as over 7 years experience working in holistic wellness with over 600 hours of certifications in a variety of yoga and meditation concentrations. She also offers her love of travel through her company, Rising Nature Retreats. Kelly is passionate about travel, nature, holistic wellness, and community building, and believes when these are combined, magic can happen. Kelly Tolliday.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Wow, what a bio.
You wrote it, kind of. I just tweaked it here and there.
But you hear it back sometimes, you're like, wow, I have done some really cool stuff. Like, that's awesome.
I know, right? Should we just end it there?
Yeah, I mean,
That's it.
perfect.
That
we're
is
good.
Kelly. Okay, so I like to start off by asking everybody, if you were at a dinner party or for you maybe at the end of a yoga class and you were chatting up somebody who you didn't know and they asked, Kelly, what do you do? What would your response be?
Okay, so this is always a tricky one for me.
I know.
Because I do so many things. What I have been saying as of late is I am a group travel and retreat facilitator with a focus on wellness, yoga, and personal development.
And how is that usually received?
I think for the most part, people hear the group travel and retreat part and they think, oh, cool. But then it's kind of like they want to know more because it's not something that you typically hear. You're either going to hear, oh, I used to say I'm a yoga teacher. And then I just realized it's so much more than that. Not that just being a yoga teacher is anything wrong with that, but there is so much that goes into being able to plan these retreats and these group travel experiences. So now I've just been really, building it in together as my little elevator pitch onto what I do. And I found that a lot of people are asking questions because they want to run retreats or they have a corporate team they want to take, they want to plan a retreat for a corporate team. And so I have been getting, now that I've been calling myself that, that's what people are starting to be like, wow, that's really cool. Tell me more about it.
Okay, cool. So what did you want to be as a kid?
So my mom just sent me a list actually last week. I was maybe like 6 or 7 and it said, I believe one of them was a firefighter, a policewoman. Mom was on the list, which is interesting because in my early 20s, I didn't really have that pull. I think a writer maybe was on there. But what's really interesting is when I think maybe around like 8 or 9, I got really hooked into wanting to be a radio DJ.
No way.
And my dad knew someone who was a radio DJ. So he let me get on a call with her and she was so nice and like got on a call with me. And I got to ask all these questions and she sent like a signed headshot of herself. And now I think it's really cool because I run a podcast. Because I'm like, what the heck? I'm like a millennial podcast dream come true.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. Why was that on the list?
I don't know. I feel like we talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
Like I'm a Leo. Like I've always loved to be on the mic in front of groups. I used to run choreographed dances for Thanksgiving. Like I just was always the kid wanting to be in front of some sort of audience. And something about using my voice was really appealing. I was always into acting and singing and dancing and cheerleading. And I was always like somebody to use my voice in school politics or whatever. Like I was always speaking in some capacity. So I guess maybe that was something along the lines of it. But I was piecing it together the other day and I was like, oh my God, I wanted to be a radio DJ. And here I am, just literally did not have a plan as of July of this year to host a podcast. An opportunity fell into my lap to host one. And 5 weeks later, it's born and it's alive and there's episodes and it's fun. And so it's pretty cool like to see it all kind of come together.
I love those stories because there's something about that age, and I've heard it around like 10, like give or take a year on either side, is where you are old enough to have the awareness of what you like and what you're good at and the innocence of thinking you could do it,
Exactly.
right? And there's something about, that's why I ask people, because there's something about that age where it's like, that's kind of where you're at. Like if you can hold on to that for the rest of time, you might be in a good space. If you're like lost and want to find your way back, that's a good question to ask yourself if anyone's wondering.
I love that.
Yeah, so that's funny that you brought that. I forgot about that. Cool. So I want to talk about so much stuff because as I said in the bio, you do a lot. But just to give people like a frame of reference for like, who is Kelly? Tell us about going through school. What did you study and why?
Yeah. So growing up in high school, I was a competitive swimmer, but I was also really into music. And I really wanted to be a journalist. I really wanted to be a music journalist. I wanted to go to all the shows. I wanted to interview celebrities and musicians. And one of my dreams in junior year, senior year, I thought I was going to go into school for journalism. And with all good intentions, my dad was always like, what kind of degree you're going to get? It snowballs into your career and look at the salaries and look at this, look at that. And with all good intentions, it kind of steered me away from maybe going into journalism from that perspective. And then when I got into college, I went in undeclared. Like I didn't know what I wanted. I had a really great counselor and she was kind of helping me figure out where were my strengths. And unfortunately, I had this narrative in my head growing up that I just wasn't good at science and I'm not good at math. So I wanted nothing to do with a business degree. I wanted nothing to do with actually a marketing degree because you had to do all these math classes and finance classes that I just thought I wasn't good at. Now it's funny because I run the whole finance department of my business now. And I run all the profit loss statements. I run everything. But it's funny because looking back, like that story that I kept telling myself that I wasn't good at math and science just because I was really good at English and I was really good at writing. For some reason, I just thought I wasn't good at math and science. It steered me away from choosing degrees that could have really helped me in the long run of my career. But anyways, I ended up landing on public relations and communications because there was no finance. There was no finance class I had to take.
There were no numbers.
There was no numbers. A lot of writing, which ends up kind of going in line with that journalism drive, writing a lot of press releases. I was really into wanting to work in PR for a tourism board or some sort of alcohol entertainment brand. Like I really wanted to work in that space. And so I did a couple internships through college. I was working with government agencies. I worked with Visit Florida. I did a couple campaigns for. I was really lucky that I got really amazing professors who were happy to like stick their neck out for you and make introductions, which was amazing. I was a part of the Florida Public Relations Association for the chapter of Florida State, which is where I went. So we went to New York City, we went to Atlanta, we went on all these different trips to meet different agencies and different ways of working in PR so that we could get an idea of where we wanted to go. And so I thought PR is my go-to. This feels great. I loved going to the parties. I loved mingling. I loved the networking. And I did a couple internships at home, actually, with a family friend who owns a national and really internationally recognized marketing agency that works specifically on marketing to moms. And I was an intern for multiple summers for her. And that'll circle back later in the story. But anyways, I graduated college with my PR degree, a minor in hospitality, and I believe I got a minor in Spanish. I can't remember if I passed that or not. but there was an interest there in learning
Spanish.
Yes, there was an interest in learning Spanish, particularly because I kept getting told, if you're going to work in New York, if you're going to work in Miami, if you're going to work in LA, it's really awesome if you're able to say, I got a minor in Spanish, and then I can also be fluent in that language as well. I've also always had this desire to move to Costa Rica and live in Costa Rica as well. So there's this like desire. So I always wanted to have that Spanish background as well. So anyways, graduated. I had met my partner my fall semester of college, and he's Australian. And so after I graduated college, I decided to move to Australia and start my career in Australia.
So was he here studying?
This is actually a whole podcast episode.
Okay.
Episode 1 on Transform with Travel. If anyone's listening,
Go check it out.
It's a hour long of the story of us. But anyways, I was in Ireland for 10 days with a friend for a wedding. And he was also in Ireland just traveling with a friend. And we met in a pub and we kept in contact. A couple of weeks later, I flew back to Europe to stay with him. And then we said goodbye on like January 3rd. And 2 months, not even 2 months, 5 weeks later, he flew to Tallahassee to stay with me for my last semester of college because he was studying online. It was like remote uni or something like that. So I graduated and he's like, I have to go back for my clinicals for my university degree. I have to be back in Sydney. Will you move back with me? And I did. And luckily, Sydney is an easy place to get a job for PR and marketing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. So first, how long were you in Australia?
I was there for 5 years.
Okay.
Mhm.
And there's like so much to unpack
I know.
there. Okay. So you
I
just,
just dropped a bomb on you.
I know. Okay. So we'll glaze over the fact that like you met your soulmate and you just took like a little leap of faith and it like worked out. So that's cool. And you're in Australia. So you're doing PR and stuff. So if anyone's listening who has this, because I know like coming out, I did political science, international relations. And I would have loved to like do some type of international job. It feels really overwhelming, especially when you're coming out of school with all the visas and like, how does somebody go about doing that?
Yeah. So Australia, I don't know what it's like right now, but back at that time, you could get a visa called a working holiday visa. And so that visa allows, I believe it's under the age of 30 or 32, maybe. They keep increasing it, which is great. But you can get a visa for relatively inexpensive, relatively easy, as long as you don't have a criminal record or anything like that. And you can go over and get a full 1-year working holiday visa where you go over there and you can work probably, I think it's for really any job, any full-time job, a casual job, like working in a barista or working in a marketing job. The thing is, it's kind of hard to find a job that will employ like a full-time marketing job for, let's say, that knows that working holiday visa is going to end in a year. So you have to go in with it with the intention of potentially extending that visa or them sponsoring you. There's a visa that's a sponsorship visa for businesses can sponsor, which I know has gotten a little bit harder as well. But there are ways to do it. You could also just go over there and freelance and have US clients while you're also traveling Australia and building relationships in Australia there. So when I first moved over there, I was on a working holiday visa and I got an internship at a PR firm in the center of Sydney. And then that internship led me to a sales role, really. I was looking for a job. A recruiter got me a job with this social selling. It's kind of like B2B selling, but through LinkedIn. And I joined that as a coordinator. I learned a lot about sales. I learned a lot about really just speaking to C-suite level individuals as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, and like having the confidence to build that up. The director of that agency really let me go off on my own and do my thing, which was amazing. And then after that, we got an opportunity to teach English in Thailand.
Cool.
So back to another bombshell here.
No, I love it. A good friend of mine did that in Thailand, yeah.
So my husband had traveled through Thailand a lot as Australians. They go take gap years. They take 6 months. And he had been traveling to Asia a lot with his family since he was young. And we knew that we wanted to get out of Sydney for a little bit. My working holiday visa was about to end. We weren't quite sure. We knew that we were together for the long haul, but we weren't quite sure, do we apply for a partnership visa? That seemed really heavy. Like we don't really quite know where we want to go with this. So we got an opportunity to teach English in Thailand and we got the jobs. And so we went over there at the end of my working holiday visa in Australia. We went over to Thailand and we spent a year living and working through Thailand. The English job didn't last very long because it's just the expectations that they laid out as like perks of the job didn't exactly match up to what the reality was. The area that we were living in were amazing. The people we were working with were amazing. The community, the Thai people were amazing. It's just the day-to-day there was like some dissonance between what we thought was going to happen and how it actually worked out. I'm all over the place with my career now that I'm talking about this.
That's why
incredible.
You're such a great guest because you have no idea. Like so many people, especially like clients of mine, are these multi-hyphenates who it's our society isn't built around people who have more than one interest, right? And that's ridiculous because we're humans, we're multifaceted. We're allowed to be interested in more than one thing and more than one career path. And unfortunately, like it's just not set up that way. But that's why I thought you'd be a great guest, because you have this really cool thing that you're doing with this interesting corporate background and travel. Like there are so many things, and I mean, you seem pretty happy. So that's the question. Like, what did you do? And it seems to be working out. And how, if someone's listening to this, how can somebody who wants to travel or who has a bunch of different interests, like not feel guilty doing that and also make money? Because going through the realistic lens, it's still life. We have to make money. We have to be able to buy food to eat and all the primary things. So, so you're in Thailand with your partner.
Yes.
And you're kind of teaching English. So how long did it last?
So we started in April. They have a festival. The start of the Thai New Year is April 15th, April 14th, something like that. And it's called Songkran, and it's a water festival. And you just go around the streets and have water guns and spraying water at everyone. But that was kind of like the kickoff of the school year. So we were starting there.
That's how every school year should kick off.
Yeah, right? Like one big water festival.
Yeah.
And so we started there, and I think we lasted until mid-August because we had a wedding that we had to get to, his brother's wedding we had to get to in Colombia in August. And they told us, it's okay, you can take that time off, no worries, you get 30 days paid leave, all these things. We're like, this is awesome. Like, this is great. And it turns out push came to shove, they were not going to let us get the time off. And we're like, well, this is his brother's wedding. Right. So it's either we're going to leave and you're going to give us the time off, or we're just going to leave and you're never going to see us again. And that's kind of ended up how it played out. But it ended up working out because I had never been to Southeast Asia. I wanted to see more of it. The time that we were told we were going to get to see Southeast Asia was not what we were actually getting. Yeah. So I was kind of feeling this pull of like, I want to see more. At the same time, a couple months prior, starting our job in Thailand, I had started working in freelance marketing. Okay. So I was like, I feel like there's going to be a need for us to have a supplemental income. I was still fresh out the boat out of college. Yeah. It wasn't like I had 10 years experience to back myself up. But I started to go into different tourism conferences around Sydney and start making connections with travel agents and small scale hotels. And like in the vertical in which I wanted to work in, I wanted to work in health, I wanted to work in travel. Those were the two things. Okay. So I started going to these travel conferences so that I could meet some of these agents that needed help with their social media. And I was learning as I went. I was learning how to do.
This is like what? Like right when Instagram came out?
2014.
Okay. So,
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was really just Facebook, a little bit of LinkedIn, which I knew a lot of because of my LinkedIn social selling background in the previous role, and Instagram, which was still just really rudimentary at that stage. So I was learning as I went. I was reading blogs. I got small scale clients to join on board. I was learning how to run with clients, manage clients, work with the finances, and I was just kind of learning things as I went. And at the same time, I had started a travel blog. This was a couple years prior because I had been to different countries and I started creating a travel blog. But while I was living in Sydney, I was really just documenting my life there so that my friends at home and my family at home could read about it. And so as we started traveling, I said, okay, maybe if I could get a couple more clients, we can afford that extra trip to XYZ place. Maybe if I keep writing this blog, we can get a free night stay at a nice hotel in Bangkok. So I just kept up with these passions. I was always pretty good at picking up tech. I was always pretty good at picking up new platforms. When you work with a couple clients and they're like, oh, TikTok, now I gotta get on TikTok. Like I'm pretty good at being like, here's a new platform, let's get on it. This is the way we do it. So as social media was starting to emerge, my background in PR and writing and communications was how I translated to copywriting and blog writing and ad writing. And at the same time, my background in being able to, in that marketing sense of knowing strategy from working in different capacities and different agencies, and also just the way that my brain worked, I was able to kind of work with clients in that way. I've always kind of had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. So it wasn't, it's not scary for me to work on my own or freelance or anything like that. So after we finished our Thailand English teaching job, we just said, okay, we're going to do what we can to make money. I'll freelance. Well, we got a lot of, back in the day when travel blogging wasn't influencers, it wasn't even called influencers back then. Like we got so much we got free meals, we got free stays, we got free tours and in exchange for our work and our photography. And my husband at the time also created a travel blog and ended up getting like thousands and thousands of followers because back then there wasn't a lot of male voices online, especially in the travel space. Now it's flooded. But so we kind of went on our way like that until we got into Thailand in April of 2015. And then we finished traveling in January of 2016. So we were there almost for 9 months, traveling around to different countries and working in that capacity and freelancing.
Okay. What does your partner do?
He now runs a residential renovations company here in South Florida.
Okay.
Back then.
Yeah, like back then, like when you met him and when you were traveling around.
When I met him, he was studying to become an English and PE teacher.
Okay.
He decided very quickly that when we decided we would eventually move back to the U.S., like eventually when we were going to have a family and build our lives and build a family here, that we were going to move back to the U.S. And the state in which the education sector, industry, the state in which teachers are appreciated and respected with income was just not at the level in which he saw our lives moving towards.
Okay.
So he had always been working on the side in trades. So he's in landscaping certifications. He's a certified carpenter back in Australia, a builder, which is another certification in Australia. And so when he decided that he's not going to be a teacher anymore, he went full into working with his friend who owned a carpentry business, a full-scale construction business in Australia, worked side by side with him from when we got back to Australia after Southeast Asia all the way through when we moved back here to the U.S. So he built up his career in construction, moved back here, and then opened up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I love to know. It's interesting, especially when somebody finds a partner young like you did and you kind of grow together. First of all, that's amazing because that in and of itself is like a huge win, right? And like, wow, congrats. But it's always interesting to know like how it is a partnership, supporting each other, doing your own thing and doing things together. I think it's really cool and also important for people who are listening. Like it's different if you're on your own, right? As opposed to if you have somebody else and it's like, okay, you have that income coming in for this month. You have nothing lined up. Don't worry, I got you.
Exactly.
Like we got, and so that's great. And it doesn't have to be like a romantic partner, by the way, for anyone who's listening. Like you can always partner with a business partner. And I want to talk 100%. About your business partner later on. But okay, so you decided to come back to the States. So let's like backtrack for a second and just talk about travel because you have a podcast about travel. You clearly like love travel. What was the first trip that you took? You were like, fuck, this is cool.
Yeah. So I actually just recorded a whole podcast episode about this.
Once again, please go listen to
Transform with Travel, episode 14.
It's a great title. Like, it's so good.
Yeah. So for me, it was never one trip. Hearing stories of my parents traveling through Europe together, through the U.S. together. They're with friends, with themselves. I grew up hearing stories of my grandma traveling with her sister when they've no longer had husbands in the 70s and 80s by themselves, going to the Amazon, going to Egypt, going to Bethlehem. So I grew up hearing stories of my family going out and having these adventures. On top of that, we also traveled as a family domestically through Florida, maybe skiing, maybe we'd do a cruise here or there, nothing like major living overseas or anything like that. But I was lucky enough to be able to have experiences of traveling with my family and then even having very early on experiences where I don't remember the trip to Colorado, but they've shown me pictures. They've told me the stories about how I threw up everywhere because I was getting car sick. Like they've told me stories of being on
Parents
the top of a
don't
mountain
forget
and
that.
freaking out, right? But I think this is what the podcast episode that I recorded was all about was these stories fill our lives with adventures and the curiosity as a kid. So it was never a question of whether I was going to love travel or not. I think it's been woven into who I am as a person. There's been trips here and there where definitely been like highlights of my life. Like we going camping with my dad, going to DC in 7th grade by myself, going to Costa Rica for the first time and being like, I'm going to live here one day. Like side note, we're going to Costa Rica in 2 weeks to go look at property. Like these things, like, you know, there's breadcrumbs in your life that kind of like lead you to certain moments where you realize that you've arrived to some destination, that you've arrived to who you wanted to become. And so part of this for me, travel has never been just one trip and been like, bam, I'm going to do this forever. It's like a part of who I am. And it's where I feel, and my partner as well, I'm very lucky in this respect, that we both feel our happiest, healthiest, freest self when we're traveling, whether that's just a road trip or we're in Greece or we're in Thailand. Like we are our best selves when we're traveling. And so we're lucky that we've been able to find each other in that respect.
Yeah. Truly. Yeah. Because it's such a distinct lifestyle. So how do kids work?
Yeah.
Please tell me how to travel with children. We have like the same, for listeners, Kelly and I have the same children.
Yeah.
They're the same ages. We took a trip to go to actually a family friend's funeral. And it was like my son was 3 months old. My daughter was 2 at the time. And it was like, we were so scared. And it was okay. Like, it was fine. It was just like, I should show you this picture. It was like a Sherpa, like just the amount of stuff.
Right.
So please tell us how.
Yeah. I mean, we're still figuring it out too, because they're still so young. So I don't have all the answers. I would say, I mean, so we've been to Australia and Ireland and England, to Greece, and
with the kids.
Wow. We're going to Thailand with them for 5 weeks at the end of this year. So my youngest is not as good of a traveler. As of now, she's only a year, so I'm going to cut her a little slack.
Sure. I mean, I guess.
I mean, whatever. But she's
Get it together.
Exactly. She's just not as flexible with sleeping or time changes or any of that as my youngest was as my oldest was at that age.
Oh, interesting.
So it's been a little throwing us for a little bit of a loop, because you think the first one did fine, so the second one will, and then you realize they're two completely different people.
It's a personality
so we are
thing,
definitely still learning.
Yeah.
But the one thing that always resonates in my mind is just because something's hard doesn't mean it's bad. And so traveling with kids is hard. Traveling just in general is hard, especially now post-pandemic. It is not the same as it used to be, but just because it is hard and it's challenging, and yes, being at home with all your creature comforts and all the snacks and all the toys in hand's reach would be much easier. That is not the life in which that I want my life to be aligned to. I don't want to have taken the easy route in any way. And I mean, my daughter's 3 and she talks about Costa Rica and she talks about Muay Thai and she talks about Greece, and like she knows about all these places and she's curious. And so that's just what keeps me moving when things are hard, because there's no like set tip. Like this is going to make your life easier when you travel with kids. No, like what's going to work for me is not going to work for you. What's going to work for you is going to be different to somebody else. Every kid is different. Traveling with kids is hard.
Yeah.
But it's my why. It's kind of like when you own a business. Being a business owner is fucking hard. It's hard, right? Yeah. Being a business owner is hard, but you have to have a why to keep you attached to the reason why you're waking up and you're going through the ups and downs of being a business owner, ups and downs of whatever job you're in. Same thing goes when you're doing something with your children, whether it's traveling, whether it's trying a new activity, whether it's expanding your family and having a new child. Like it's everything. You just got to keep to your why. And your core value and the values that you want to instill in your family. We want to instill a sense of curiosity, a sense of compassion, a sense of flexibility and adaptability in our children. And we believe that travel is the best way to do that for them. That might look completely different to another family. So that's what keeps us going when it's a 14-hour flight delay and they're literally on the ground of an airport screaming and there's just boogers and tears and all the excrements are flying around.
Good. It's not just
no, it's hard. But again, it goes back to what are the values that you want to instill and how do you think is the best way to get there?
That's so interesting. So do you see with your older daughter, because your younger one's too young to know really, but with your older one, when did you see her start to like recall?
Definitely recently. So she's 3. Yeah. I would say in the last 3 months. And even then I kind of have to prompt her into it. Like she'll pick up a toy or we read books. Like everywhere I go, whether it's with them or without them, I bring them books back home from the countries we go to. And so we were reading a book about the goddess Athena. It was a book that we got her in Greece when we were there. And she was like, she pointed to the outline of the country of Greece and she's, what is that? I said, that's Greece. And she's like, I've been there. I'm like, yes, you have. So whether she actually remembers that or whether that's just the script that's just been like embedded into her. But that's what I'm saying. I don't remember my trips growing up to Colorado or the family reunion in South Carolina, but I've been told the story so many times that there is some latent memory in the back of my subconscious that I know I was there.
Yeah.
And so it's the power of being able to tell the stories.
So, so take us through like you come back to the States from Australia because, well, first of all, why did you decide to come back to the States?
So it was always a conversation that we had in very early stages of our relationship. We've had to be very serious about our relationship since the very beginning because with visas and and partnership visas and marriage visas and
just the logistics.
I'm going to move my whole life for you across the world. Like, you have to be very clear. Since the moment we met and became like exclusive in our relationship, we basically had to create bank accounts together to have a paper trail for government to be able to say, oh, they've had a bank account since 2014. This is a legitimate relationship. So we've had to be very serious since the beginning. We've had to have conversations, important conversations since the beginning. And so early on, I said, I want to travel all over the world. I definitely want to live in Australia. I would love to spend so much time with your family and get to know where you're from. But when we have kids, I know I'm going to want to be as close to my family as possible, which then became very hard because I became very close to his family. And so when we decided to leave and have children across the world from them, that is also heartbreaking. But for Sam, I guess I'll back up. We spent 5 years in Australia. Part of that we were in Southeast Asia. But when we came back in January 2016, I started a role there at a marketing agency. I worked my way up. We had friends. We had family. It's amazing. Healthcare, education's amazing. You've got the mountains. You've got the ocean. I was like, I'm sold. I'm happy. I'll stay here. It was really hard for me. And we knew that we were going to get married soon, and we had to start the process for the green card process for the U.S. And I turned to Sam. I said, look, I would actually be very happy living here in Australia. We've got great friends. It's a very easy life. Everyone looks out for each other. And he said, you got your fresh start coming after college from the U.S. to Oz. It's like, I'm really feeling this need to get a fresh start and move over to the States.
Wow. Okay.
So it ended up being reversed, where he was the one being like, I want to move to America. And there was a lot of other factors at play as to why he wanted to have a fresh start. But I respected that. And I said, okay, let's do this. And so we ended up having to wait a little while for his green card. So we ended up going traveling again through Southeast Asia. But at that stage, I had a really thriving freelance marketing side, as well as the yoga teacher training that I had done in Sydney at the time. So I had a bunch of different side avenues of income. So we went traveling again. When we got the green card, we moved back to the U.S. in July 2019.
Oh, wow. Okay. So relatively recently. And then you had your daughter pretty quickly after.
Yeah. I mean, we moved back in July 2019, got pregnant December 2019, and then pandemic hit. Yeah, and she was born. Here we are.
Love it. Okay. So as you're traveling around, so that's interesting. That whole story about him wanting to come to the States is very interesting. And as you're traveling around waiting for his green card to come through, you've cultivated this digital marketing freelance business and yoga, which we're going to get into. But how did you get clients with that? I mean, as a young woman who was not as seasoned as some people might have wanted a, quote unquote business owner or, marketing professional to get clients. How did you put yourself out there? How did you present yourself to get clients? And did they just come to you? How does somebody do that if they don't have all the experience that they think that they should have?
Back in 2015, when I started my first freelance endeavor, I ended up partnering with a business partnership duo called Bucket List Bombshells. And they have a ton of online courses for women specifically to learn how to build and run an online business, everywhere from the financials to the contracts to the sales to everything. On top of that, they have sub-courses on becoming a graphic designer, social media management, all of these sub-courses so that they can help women elevate themselves to be able to be confident in running their own business. And so I worked with them on their beta course, basically. I was a quote unquote influencer, travel influencer at the time. They recognized that. We worked together in a work trade and I posted about their program. That really helped me build a lot of confidence back then in 2015, so that when I looped back around in 2018, 2019, so 4 or 5 years later, I had 4 or 5 years of freelancing and working in a marketing agency. I was the manager for accounts like Kimberly-Clark. So I was the lead for Huggies Australia. I was the lead for Cottonelle. We worked with 7-Eleven. I was the lead, I guess you could say Facebook ad person. Okay. Media spend. I was the lead for Bayer, for Dove. So I had a lot of experience working with really high-level clients, working day-to-day account management, and also working behind the scenes doing the execution, creating hundreds of thousands of Facebook ad spend, Instagram ad spend. So I knew what I was doing at that stage. So it was almost like all of these years were laddering up into this experience, leading up into this confidence. Like I mentioned, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. So it has been fairly easy for me to just go up to someone and say, I see you're having a problem. I have a solution. These are the different levels
Yeah, but that's
and
very
tiers.
key what you just said. Can you say it again?
I see you're having a problem.
Yes.
I have a solution.
Yeah.
And so luckily, I also knew the vertical. I said the industry I wanted to work with. I was gearing more and more towards that health and wellness. I still love travel. Obviously, it's a part of who I am. But as I got more steeped in the yoga community in Sydney, at that time, I got my yoga teacher training. I was working in a studio on the side. I was doing trainings. I was running retreats in Australia at the same time. So I was really steeped in the yoga community. This is happening almost like in parallel universes.
It
It's
sounds
literally
like it,
running
yeah.
there was the yoga Kelly and then there was the marketing Kelly.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of running these in parallel to each other, but I was noticing yoga teachers and fitness instructors and studios and all these different health and wellness service-based businesses and product-based businesses were really struggling with social media and Facebook ads. So I was able to kind of bridge the gap between the two, bringing my marketing background to these really well-intentioned people just had no idea anything about social media marketing. So I ran a couple workshops for people just talking about the why of social and the branding and all of that. And then through those workshops, I landed a bunch of clients that took me through all of our travels while we were waiting.
Oh, cool. Okay, awesome. And I love that because that's kind of where, we were talking about it earlier on your podcast, that sweet spot of where your experience is and where your excitement is. And within that overlap, which is what you found, which is so cool. And yeah, I actually wrote that down. So you have marketing Kelly, you have travel Kelly, you have yoga Kelly, you have mom Kelly, you have retreats Kelly. And we haven't even talked about yoga and retreats, but what is the common golden thread that is running through all of these things?
Yeah. So I think
things being you.
I think there was a part of me where we got towards the end of June or July 2018. That's when we left Sydney to go travel and wait for the screen card, right? And we didn't even move to the US until July 2019.
Okay.
So it was almost a full year of traveling around, working freelance. We came back to Oz for a couple times, just kind of popping in and out. And we were in this stage. But when we got towards that end of leaving Sydney and I said goodbye to all my work colleagues who I had worked for 3 or 4 years, said goodbye to all of our friends again, there was really this push-pull of me wanting to step out of the marketing Kelly role and really into this holistic wellness role. But I didn't quite know how to bring in the money on the holistic side of things, and the marketing was bringing in the money. So I stayed with marketing for another 3 or 4 years. Even when we moved back to the US, I landed that role. Remember when I said I interned with a marketing agency with Marketing for Moms? When I moved back to the US, she offered me a job full-time, and I worked with her for another 2 years. At the same time, building the yoga business, building the retreats, building the community here in South Florida. And so I think now looking back, I was kind of thinking, what was the point of all of this marketing, digital marketing, social media marketing? What was the point of all of that? Did I waste all my time? If I could have gone back again and gone to college, I kept saying I would have done something in nutrition. I would have done something where, I don't know, I could have used those degrees to further my holistic wellness. I would have taken that science class. I would have taken that finance class, whatever it was. But now looking back, as I run my own business of Rising Nature Retreats with my business partner, Chloe, the marketing strategy and the business acumen alone, the professional acumen alone was worth all of those years, 12, 13 years of working in that capacity. And now I'm able to bring our messaging and our offerings and our events to a wider scale because of the experience that I have worked in marketing. And now the common thread of all of that kind of weaving together is this baby of Rising Nature Retreats. So I've been teaching yoga, meditation, mindfulness, running retreats, working in all these different capacities for about 7 years. And 2 years ago, almost to the day here as of recording, me and my business partner, Chloe, decided to join forces because she was also doing the same thing, slightly different modalities for about the same amount of time. And we said, you know what, let's join forces. Let's do this together. And now we have this little baby, big baby now of Rising Nature Retreats.
Toddler.
It's definitely in the toddler phases for sure. We're feeling that. If anyone who owns a business is listening, you will know what that is like when you're in the toddler phases of your business. But it's great because we're able to really infuse the yoga and the wellness and the holistic practices that we are so passionate about and that have changed our lives so well, along with incredible world-class travel experiences. Because as I'm sure people listening can tell, I've loved travel. It's changed my life. It's opened up so many doors for me. It's brought me my husband. like it's been incredible. And so many people are either fearful of going out on their own and traveling, or they don't have someone to go with, so they don't want to go alone. And so these experiences really allow people to go explore the world, immerse themselves in another culture, while also infusing these daily yoga and wellness practices so that they can go home feeling refreshed and feeling happy and feeling rejuvenated to go back home and integrate that into their life. And so it's a really cool way of bringing in this travel passion, yoga passion, and also a large part of what I do on the business side of things is working on the marketing. So
obviously.
it's like bringing it all together.
Yeah. And so that's amazing. What pulled you towards yoga? Like, where did yoga come in even? Like, you kind of glazed over that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
It's so funny because it feels like my marketing life was so long ago where it was my full-time thing, right? And then, but then when you actually talk about it, you're like, wow, I've spent so many days, so many people.
Part of my life.
And so many people think, oh, this business just popped up overnight and it's a success. Or you see someone, you think, oh, wow, they must have been in this specific business for so long. And it's like, actually, no, Rising Nature Retreats is 2 years old.
Yeah.
In the back end, I've spent 10 plus years building these skills.
Right.
But so yoga for me, this is probably a whole nother podcast episode, but I'll try to be short. So I was a competitive swimmer in high school. And my shoulder was getting a lot of wear and tear. Physical therapy wasn't working. Chiro wasn't working. Eventually, my coach said, look, I have heard of this thing called yoga. This was way back when it was just Bikram hot yoga. It was very intense, very hot, very sweaty, very smelly. And I went as a 15-year-old student athlete. So, of course, the intensity, the competition, can you put your leg up this way and then bend that way, and the teacher yelling at you, I loved it. The physical intensity was one thing. But then the thing that really hooked me was my first Shavasana. When I laid down, I was so physically depleted, like literally from just sweating everything out, but also contorting myself in ways that I've never done before. I was so physically depleted that my mind could actually be still for a 15-year-old athlete, like student, honors, all those things. Your brain never stops. Literally never stops working. Never stops running. And so to be in that Shavasana, my mind completely still, my body completely serene. I had my first real conversation with God in that Shavasana. I remember hearing like a really strong present voice, like, you are going to do this. Like, this is going to be in your life. And I heard that really early on. And it definitely helped with my mobility of my shoulder, which is what I went there for.
Sure.
But then it ended up, like I said before, dropping this breadcrumb in my life where I followed it. So I kept going to Bikram classes. I went to yoga in college. I went to yoga classes in college at the student union, gym. And I kept getting a little bit deeper and deeper. But it really wasn't until I went to Asia, which I know me and you have spoken about your trip to India and how that really helped you expand your knowledge of Buddhism and yoga. And again, that was for me going to and spending a lot of time in Southeast Asia in 2015. And then again, spending a lot of time in Southeast Asia in 2018. And we went to India for 5 weeks. Like, that to me just really expanded my perception and perspective of what the yogic practice is truly about. And so in 2017, I did my first yoga teacher training in Sydney with a teacher called Mark Bredner. He's my main teacher. I've done 600 something hours with him now. And I did my 200-hour training with him. And then the following year, I went to Bali and did a 50-hour training with him. And then luckily, he is incredible at online teacher training. So I was able to continue with him while I moved to the U.S. And so that's really how it blossomed.
Okay. How do you find the online teacher trainings as opposed to like in person?
Yeah. So I was really skeptical.
Yeah.
Really skeptical. I mean, the magic of being in the container held by Mark and other teachers that I've done trainings with, but specifically Mark, because I just respect him so much and he's changed my life. But I did not know how that was going to go. I was like, I want to be in this group. I want to feel the energy. I want to be held by these people. I want to see Mark eye to eye. I just want to be in his presence. But when I moved to the US, I had no option. And he was starting to move to the online model pre-pandemic. He was doing it a year before the pandemic hit. Thank God for him, because it was able to sustain his business for sure. But I did an online training. My first one was after my daughter was born in September 2020. I was really struggling with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, really struggling with the permanence of having a child. Like, I was just like, my life has changed. My business has changed. What am I going to do? My mind was going everywhere. And luckily, he was offering a 50-hour meditation training online, which I had already done that training in Bali a year earlier. But I was like, I just need to be in his presence again. Like, I just need to get back to the root of this practice, get back to the root of the philosophy and come back to myself. And I was blown away. I mean, it definitely depends on the facilitator and it definitely depends on the teachings and you as a person. But I felt just as held and just as the wisdom was just as transmitted as it was online as it is in person. Again, totally depends on the facilitator. But he does an incredible job at that.
That's interesting because I would always wonder, especially for yoga, because you're doing asanas and how do you get corrected? How do you get assists if you're not in person? So I'm always like curious to know how people have enjoyed or not enjoyed their online training. So that's really interesting. And then for your retreat business, I mean, obviously with the travel, it makes sense. But if someone's never been on a retreat, I see it on Instagram all the time, like especially for yoga, it's like retreats. What is the point of a retreat? Like, what are you doing at the retreat? Why would someone go on a retreat?
Totally. So each retreat is different. Each facilitator is going to be different. So every retreat typically has a theme or something like that. So what you get out of a retreat is going to be based on what that general theme is. Some people's retreats might be around meditation. Some of them might be on an Ayurvedic cleanse. Some of them might be a surf and yoga retreat. So every retreat is going to be flavored with something different. For us in particular, why someone would go on a retreat with us is to be able to experience the world in a very supportive and safe space while also being able to do a lot of that inner work. I try to avoid the word healing because sometimes people think healing is just like tears and crying and hard and painful, but like we make healing really fun.
How?
It's a lot of group support.
Okay.
We heal through our excursions. We heal through observing and being immersed in these cultures, right? So many people walked away from our Greece retreat with their biggest takeaway was by observing Greek culture, how slow everything was and how they could slow down back at home. Yes, our yoga was incredible. Yes, the workshops were great. Yes, they walked away with journal prompts that changed their life. But the main thing that they were able to heal within themselves was this urgency and this urgency culture. Yeah. They were able to rectify that within themselves just by watching Greek culture. So we try to give a lot of space in our retreats to allow people to interact with the culture and observe and immerse so that they get more than just a twice daily yoga, 3 meals a day, in and out, go back home. Like there's a lot of support that's through this retreat, not with the group, but also one-on-one with me and Chloe. And the main thing that people really seem to connect with is this idea of integration back at home. So a lot of times you'll fly into a yoga retreat, you'll have an amazing time, you'll come back home. That's it. You don't really hear much from the group anymore. You don't hear much from the teacher anymore. And something that we really pride ourselves on is this group interaction through a WhatsApp group. We have done multiple meetups multiple times throughout the year for people that are in South Florida. Multiple times people get together to catch up. And there's been friendships born out of this that you would never even imagine be possible. And they're still hanging out together 3 years later. But also the integration side of things is that we do a really good job at checking in with everyone. We send out email support with ways to just integrate the experience back home. And so the main reason, in my opinion, on going on a retreat is to give yourself space. Get physical space from your day-to-day obligations that you're constantly getting bombarded at. This is important, and this is important, and this is important. And where are your shoes? And I need lunch. And where is my snack? And I need this deadline. Over and over and over again. A retreat is a way for you to get space to breathe, put a hand on your heart, and say, no, this is important. I am important. What do I want? Who do I want to be? What is important to me? Boom. That is the bulk of it, right? On top of that, you're also doing yoga and you're going on excursions and you're surfing and you're interacting with the local culture. But the main thing is to give yourself that space to be able to breathe and reconnect with yourself, because most of us are running around a head on a stick and having no idea what's happening from the neck down, like no connection to our body, no connection to our why. So it truly is a space for you to be able to see the world and explore and travel and have fun and heal and play and connect, but also take that time for yourself and really reconnect to yourself.
Yeah. And I love that you use the word play, because as adults, like, when do we get to do that? Like, we're like not allowed to. And so I love that. Okay. So, I mean, I didn't even get to ask you about how you met your business partner and all of that, but maybe another episode. Okay. One thing I do want to ask is how you decide where your retreats are.
Yeah.
Because you've been everywhere, it seems like. And I feel like that would just be like a kid in a candy store. Like, how do you decide where to go?
That's a good question. So a lot of times teachers will pick places that they want to go, they want to visit, and they want to get paid to do that, right?
Sure.
Which is a great business model. Sounds good. Want to travel, get paid to go there. What we really try to do is take stock and inventory of where our people really want to go.
Okay.
So we really wanted to go to Spain last year. Me and Chloe were like, northern Spain sounds amazing. Let's do it. And so we started telling people and they were like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, fun. But then we just randomly threw out Greece and it was like, take my money, like take my credit card. And we were like, oh, okay. Like wasn't necessarily like
You're
somewhere
just asking people like friends.
Instagram, email, asking our clients, hey, if we had a retreat in Spain, would you come? Yeah, I probably would. What if we did one in Greece? Oh my God. Yes. Take my deposit. Right.
Okay.
And so, yes, there has to be a level of interest by you as a facilitator, because of course you just don't want to be going somewhere you don't want to go to. But definitely you have to take note of where your people want to go, where they feel safe going to. I want to take a group to Nicaragua. My people at this stage of their journey do not feel necessarily safe to go to Nicaragua. They feel safe to go to Costa Rica. Okay, I love Costa Rica. I'll go back to Costa Rica. So it's just like taking note of how are people feeling, taking like just a finger on the pulse of where your community's at. And also something that we take pride in is we really try to go places that we've been before or lived before or have really strong connections. So like our Portugal retreat next year in 2024, neither of us have been to Portugal, but I have a very good friend who ran a retreat at this exact retreat center that we're going to.
Okay.
And so I have direct contacts. I have direct experience. So it's like you feel safe in that capacity. Or we will speak to a local retreat manager. We have a local retreat manager in Costa Rica. She's incredible. She helps us with all the different little logistics side of things.
Yeah,
so,
I imagine it would just be so crazy to plan.
Yeah,
like
it is.
All those things.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's a full travel experience. So in terms of picking locations, it's a kind of like that Venn diagram of like our interests, our people's interests, like safety aspect and ease of travel. Because we never try to go somewhere where it's going to take, forever to get to. The only exception is that we're going to Thailand in January of this year. But that's because our people were like, I want to go to Thailand. Please, 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 let's do it.
Yeah.
So we do our best of like making it ease of travel, our interest, their interest, and safety, like all kind of coming together in one.
I was wondering if you did like a blue zone thing because of Costa Rica and Greece.
Yes.
And was there another one? Did you? No. Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
No. So that's actually one of my ideas is doing like a blue zone year almost.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
But if you think about it, like we're naturally drawn towards those places, right? We're naturally drawn towards those places that are just exuding health and longevity and happiness because of the climate and the closeness to the sea and the mountains. Like there's just a reason why we're pulled to those places. And so it's natural that those retreats are popular and that people want to go there for sure.
Yeah. What is it about Costa Rica? So you're going back there like tomorrow. Soon.
Literally, we booked the ticket.
And you mentioned you're looking for property. Like what is it about Costa Rica? For someone who's been to so many places.
So in 2009, we went to Costa Rica as a family for the first time. And pretty much as soon as my feet hit the ground there, I was like, I feel like I'm home. When I interviewed you for my podcast, you said that London's somewhere that you just got there and you said, I feel like I've been here before. I feel like this is a home for me. I could live here. That was my feeling for me in Rica. I felt the warmth of the people. I fell in love with the language. That's really what kickstarted me to want to minor in Spanish and really become fluent in Spanish. And I loved the proximity of everything. I could drive everywhere very easily. I loved the surf. I loved the mountains. And now for us as a family looking for a place to call home or call second home, it's a 2-hour flight from Fort Lauderdale. It's easier to get to Costa Rica than it is to Miami sometimes. For me, it's just it offers so much. I think it hosts like 6% of the world's biodiversity in this tiny little country. And every single time I've gone there, I've gotten a different flavor of the country. I've hosted 2 retreats there, and every single time I fall in love with it more and more. I studied abroad there in 2011.
Okay.
And I stayed with a host family in a suburb outside of San Jose, which is their main city. And it was a Spanish immersion program. And it just really cemented for me how much the Pura Vida lifestyle, literally translated pure life, but it's a way of being. Everything is all good. I have what I need. Like when you ask someone, how are you? They say, Pura Vida. Like everything is good. Everything is well. And that is woven into the tapestry of their society, of their culture, of the way they treat their land. And it's felt. Like it's a very felt sense. I'm literally getting goosebumps right now. It's such a magical place. And it's why there's so many people that flock there.
Yeah.
So many people retire there. A lot of people from around the world are starting to move there, which is interesting for the property prices, but it also is a testament to the country itself.
Yeah, it's so funny. I should have mentioned this on your episode, but I think the first like group travel I did was to Costa Rica with my Spanish class in high school.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. And that just Pura Vida, like that is so funny because it's like on everything. And as soon as you hear that, like Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And I also feel like everybody has either been to Costa Rica or knows someone who's been to Costa Rica or is like planning on going to Costa Rica. And it's like, it is a really beautiful, it's a really beautiful country. And I should have told you this story on your podcast. You can edit this out if you want and put it on your podcast, but I'll tell you after. But anyway, that is awesome. So I'm going to do a couple, like, not rapid fire. They don't have to be rapid fire, but I like failed my rapid fire on your podcast. She was like, rapid fire. And I was like, let me tell you a long story. So I was going to ask you what's next, but what's next is Costa Rica. And are you bringing the kiddos?
So it's our 10-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
First week in September. And we were planning on doing a staycation just in Pompano Beach. And then this opportunity came up for us to go check out this property and this retreat center. And we're not going to have time to go until maybe mid next year. And I said, how about we just do it for our anniversary weekend? Like we're literally leaving on a Friday and we get back on Sunday. We're going to Costa Rica for 2 days. So the kids are not coming. We already had planned childcare because we were going to be out of town. We were going to go on our staycation.
Sure.
So no, this is just us and our backpacks.
And you're looking at a retreat center.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so stay tuned. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah. I'm putting it out there.
Oh my gosh. That is incredible. Cool. Okay. So hot take. What is the best travel advice you have for us?
For me, I just really think it's about letting yourself be uncomfortable.
Okay.
When you say yes to a trip that you haven't done or a country that you haven't been to yet or taking a leap of faith in any capacity, quitting a job, changing a job, whatever, you're going to be uncomfortable. And we are not used to that. We want to be comfortable all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not used to being in this discomfort. If you're able to allow yourself to be in it, whether it means not knowing what the language is, getting a menu at a restaurant, having no freaking clue what's on the menu, getting lost in a train station, like you're going to feel this heightened level of anxiety. Like travel in itself is moving from a place of comfortability of home to somewhere that's unknown. If you're able to allow yourself to be in that place of uncomfortableness and not run for the hills and go back home right away, you're able to push past that and really see where your growth zone is. So your comfort zone and your growth zone will never be in the same place. So just my piece of advice is, when you get to those stages of travel where you're feeling uncomfortable or you're a little uncertain of what the next step is, or you've missed a flight or something got delayed and now you have to change all your plans, like that happens to us so many times, allow yourself to sit and see how it feels to be uncomfortable and know that you're going to make it. Like you're going to be okay. And if you can get to the other side of that comfort zone through the uncomfortable part to the other side, you're going to find your edge and you're going to find your growth.
That's good. Best traveling advice with little kids.
Okay. So this one is really like, don't place so much expectation on them to behave in a certain way because they're not going to.
Sure.
Expect the tantrum. The thing is, if you're an anxious traveler already, or if you're an anxious parent, like I had postpartum anxiety really bad, telling someone to just expect the tantrum isn't really helpful because it just kind of makes it worse.
Yeah.
However, when you are in the middle of these stressful situations, getting to the airport, waiting for a delay, sitting on the tarmac, and the kids start to lose it a little bit. They get into a meltdown. You have to be taking care of you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be fumbling around for the toy or trying to find the iPad or sticking a snack in their mouth. You have to take those couple deep breaths before you do anything because your reaction to the chaos with more chaos is only going to breed more chaos.
Sure. Yeah.
So yes, expect it. Expect there to be a couple meltdowns just the way that there is at home. But for someone who's an anxious traveler like myself, which you probably wouldn't expect, but I get really heightened up with all the energy in the airport and everyone has anxiety and I get wrapped up into it. The kids get wrapped up into it. So I have to center myself first. So that's my number one piece of advice with kids is if you start seeing something unfolding or unraveling or they're starting to melt down, you need to go find a way to take a couple deep breaths, put your feet on the ground, ground yourself down, because otherwise it's just going to be this big storm of chaos.
Yeah, for sure. Best career advice you've ever been given?
Don't be afraid to take the leap, take the risk.
And what is your current favorite daily practice?
God, I wish I had more time for this.
Yeah.
So I used to love my morning meditation. Like I had a full 30-minute routine, my Ishta Kriya, which was passed down from Mark to me. I did it every day. It changed my life. It's still the only main practice that I recommend for the past 7 years. But as of right now, in this current stage of entrepreneurship, we're in a building phase, in a growing a family phase with 2 young kids. For me, it's coming back to anchor moments through my day. So mindful moments. When I can, I'm washing dishes, feel the water in my hands, take a couple deep breaths. When I'm driving, no music, no podcast, sit in the silence and take a couple deep breaths, like sensory deprivation, just to keep myself calm. And just using these moments as little anchor points. When I brew my cup of coffee, smell the coffee. It's literally like 2 or 3 seconds, but it's all I have right now.
Yeah.
And so using these anchor moments to kind of weave the wellness through the day rather than slotting in a specific 30-minute session.
And being like, this is when I will feel well. And then the next,
right?
Like 12 hours, you're like,
exactly.
I love that. I'm going to start to anchor my day throughout the day. That's good advice. Kelly, thank you so much.
So fun.
I didn't even mention the fact that your last name rhymes with holiday, come on, that's so awesome. Thank you so much. So you can check out, we're going to put all of the links in the show notes so you can find Kelly's podcast, you can find her Instagram, you can go on one of her retreats. And the next one is?
So we have one, I don't know when this is going to air, but we have one in January in Thailand, Portugal. We're going to the countryside of Portugal in June, and then we'll be going to Greece at the end of June through the 4th of July week.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, stay tuned for more Kelly on the show notes.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I'm so grateful for your precious time and energy. And if anything resonated with you, please feel free to share with a friend and subscribe. If you're interested in career coaching, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Courtney@resume-careers.com and follow me on Instagram at CourtneyAustinPage. Thank you so much and see you next week.